come to the floor for a vote. But this has become a major political issue that will be with us for some time. The National Organization for Women's Political Action Committee has made support of equal marriage a requirement for its full endorsement of political candidates. There are over 1,000 rights and benefits granted to married couples under the law. We say that it's grossly unfair and clear discrimination to deny these to same-sex couples. And in a society in which marriage is considered the ultimate proof of commitment, it is outrageous to deny loving same-sex couples the right to legally wed. Frankly, I have yet to hear a well-reasoned, logical argument against equal marriage. Much of the rhetoric is based on religious convictions. In addition, there is the usual reliance on misinformation and pandering to irrational fears. In considering religious objections, it's important to remember that not all religions oppose homosexuality or consider it to be sinful, but certainly some very influential ones do. One of those is Catholicism, and I'm going to use Catholicism as an example. The Catholic Church does not perform marriage rites for same-sex couples, and if all the states decided tomorrow to legalize same-sex marriage, the Catholic Church could, and most certainly would, continue to refuse to perform such rites. Legalization of same-sex marriage by any state or by the federal government would not force religious institutions to perform, sanction, or bless such unions. Today, under its own tenets, the Catholic Church will not marry Catholic couples if either or both have been divorced. Divorced Catholics must go through a process of obtaining a church-authorized annulment before they can be married in a Catholic ceremony. But of course, they can be legally married outside of church. The state does not deny them a marriage license. The state, excuse me, does not require the church's approval, and once they're wed, that couple is entitled to all those rights and benefits we talked about that are granted to any other married couple. The church can deny them a religious ceremony, but it cannot deny them the right to marry. And the state doesn't care about their religious backgrounds. What we're talking about here are non-religious civil unions, over which religious institutions do not have and should not have jurisdiction. Opponents of same-sex marriage like to talk about family and children. The real purpose of marriage, they say, is to propagate the human race and provide loving, stable homes for children. Those arguments were made by the Department of Health in arguing against same-sex marriage in the state of Massachusetts. The courts did not agree. When the state grants marriage licenses to heterosexual couples, their intent to have or raise children is definitely not a requirement. Marriages are regularly permitted when couples are well past childbearing age. Couples who can't have or simply don't want to have and raise children are legally wed every day. The state doesn't ask that question, nor does the state care whether the bride and groom have each been previously married multiple times, or how long they've known each other, or whether their relationship is loving or abusive. Various states have various minimum age requirements and rules against incest, and some may still require blood tests to rule out syphilis, but that's it. Otherwise, as long as they are consenting adults, and except in Massachusetts of opposite sexes, that license is theirs, as are all those rights and benefits that go with it. So let's not pretend that the state is in the business of furthering loving, happy, healthy marriages, because the state does not consider any of that in handing out marriage licenses. If Jack the Ripper and Lucretia Borgia were Americans alive today, they could march down the aisle and be married anywhere in the good old USA. But this right is denied to loving, committed, law-abiding, tax-paying, child-rearing, same-sex couples. Where is the sense in that? Well, the opponents say, if we allow homosexuals to marry, what's to prevent polygamy? If we allow men to marry men and women to marry women, why not women and horses or men and pigs? My God, we could be opening up a nasty can of worms here. They said the same thing about interracial marriage. Yes, they did. They said all that and more about what God intended and how marriage was meant to be between people of the same race, about children needing to be raised by parents of the same race, and about what could be next, men and beasts. But in 1964, the Supreme Court struck down the last state laws against interracial marriage, and by golly, polygamy is still illegal. and people are not running around proposing to horses and pigs. So there's another irrational argument out the window. The bottom line here is that this is about acknowledging the humanity of people who are homosexual, and that's something some people find it very difficult to do. Perhaps it's because it's out of the realm of their own personal experience. It's different. Maybe they were raised to believe that it's sinful, or maybe they just think it's weird, because they assume that they are the norm, so anything else isn't normal. It's abnormal. That attitude is changing, and it has already changed significantly over the past 30 years. When I was growing up, I'd never heard of homosexuality. Surely it did not exist in Brooklyn. It does, they're rich, for heaven's sake. And later on in high school on Long Island, I would have sworn that I didn't know anyone who was homosexual. Of course I did. I just didn't know that I did. Happily, all that is different now, because lesbians and gays are no longer invisible. Heterosexuals do know them. They're cousins and uncles and sisters and brothers and parents and grandparents and friends and neighbors and co-workers. They're not in the closet. Well, they're not all in the closet. They're at the PTA meetings and in the churches and on the athletic fields and in every profession, including the military. And everybody knows this. They are shown in positive same-sex relationships now in Tony-winning plays and Oscar-winning films and Emmy-winning television shows. They are everyday people with bills to pay and kids to raise and joys to celebrate and sorrows to bear, and that's normal. There is no logical reason to believe that the fabric of our society would somehow shred if same-sex couples were allowed to marry the people they love. How long must they wait for equality? Why should they have to wait at all? Thank you.
For Mike and Lean and David, how would you like to generate some responses?
Since Susan is with the press at the moment, I'd like to react to, or just to comment on a couple of observations that she made in terms of the Catholic Church's opposition to same-sex marriage. I don't think it's a secret at all that the opposition the support for the passage of the Marriage Protection Amendment that we encountered last year came from the lobbyists, the highly paid lobbyists for the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference of Bishops. They were the lead organization in Harrisburg that were, buttonholing every legislature in the hallways, and they did a very forceful job. They were well paid. They brought in 3 additional lobbyists to supplement their usual staff of 6, and so they did their very best. In the end, the bill did not come to a vote, and you have 2 local people here in the legislature who we are eternally grateful to for having presented obstacles to that vote. But it was enormously time-consuming for the many people across the state to fight the lobbyists that were supporting the passage of the bill. So those of you who worked so hard on that, I thank you very much. The other comment in terms of and this is just a little bit of irrelevant kind of data that came to my attention. Marriage was not a sacrament in the Catholic Church until the 11th century. Marriages were performed in civil context, and occasionally there would be a wedding kind of feast or that sort of thing in the religious community. But it was not formally part of the Church's teachings until the 11th